Microphone check, 1, 2. What is this? Hey, family, how are you? Sorry we're a few minutes late. This is Curious Formula, and you're here on Wednesday Night Live with Curious Formula. I'm your moderator and your host. Glad that you could take the time to join me. I'm here in wonderful, beautiful Bailey, Colorado. I'm here for Pahara Fellowship Institute, Pahara Institute Fellowship that I'm a member of, and I'm glad to be here with some of my leading voices and activists in education. But again, that's neither here nor there. You're here with me on Wednesday Night Live, and I want you to do one thing for me. Well, I want you to do three things for me. I want you to subscribe, like, and comment below. Be a member of this channel. Hit the notification bell and to let you know when we go live. We go live every Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'm glad that you're here with us. We're going to talk about a few things that are happening in the world of politics as you know it. So let's start. The headlines for us is Harris rising, Trump flailing. If you've been following what's going on in the news, you know politically what's happening with this race. But before we go there, we're going to talk about a few other things so that we can lighten the mood as we get to our big topic, which is, again, Harris rising, Trump flailing. But I'll talk about a few other things first before we go into that sort of deep topic, because I know that's what you guys really want to hear about. But I want to talk about Cori Bush's loss and what that means for progressives. If you haven't been following this race that well, you should know that Cori Bush, Congresswoman from the great state of Missouri, just lost her primary race to Wesley Bell in what can be described as the most expensive race potentially in Missouri history. Yes, we had a lot of money spent there from the Israel lobby, a lot of money spent there by folks who are anti-progressive, a lot of money spent there with people from unions who did not appreciate Cori Bush's vote against the infrastructure bill. And although the media is painting this as a problem in terms of the Israel-Gaza, Israel-Hamas war that's happening right now, and see Cori Bush as a somebody that was harmed, as an unintended target, if you will, of the back and forth that's happening in America and other places, when we talk about this issue, the problem that she had really goes deeper than just this particular issue. It's right on the heels of Jamal Bowman's loss in New York. And what I think happens is, frankly, it's progressives have lost their way. And I can say that. I am considered a pragmatic progressive. I'm somebody who has always supported the progressive mantra, the ideology, the policies, the important stances that they have on a lot of issues. Come on in. We like you here. This is Craig. This is one of my good buddies here who's a fellow. Craig, say hi to the folks in the audience here. He's another guy who's an awesome dude. But we're talking about sort of what the problem is with progressives that go way beyond the Israel-Hamas war. What is the problem? Well, one of the big problems are that progressives are out of sync with the national governing consensus. As you heard me say before, there's a real problem with progressives sort of pushing the partisan line, going, for their ideology over pragmatism, over what can actually be done. I'm reminded of some of the things that Jamal Bowman used to put on social media when we were talking about the infrastructure bill, when we were talking about sort of, making sure that there was additional dollars that the Biden administration wanted to put into that particular bill that would help with early learning and a number of other things coming out of COVID to help families survive, and really creating another social safety net for families coming out of COVID, for families during COVID. And the infrastructure bill was essentially stripped of all of those things, mainly because you had Joe Manchin in the Senate, the pivotal 50th vote that was necessary to pass legislation in the Senate, basically saying I didn't want that. And instead of compromising with the Senate version that could pass, many within the progressive caucus in the House of Representatives opted to not vote for the bill. And indeed, Jamal Bowman, being an example of this, put in there in his tweets and in his social media content that we could have had all of this. We could have had all of this, but because of this, we don't have that, and so I must vote no. Progressives have to learn this just the way I learned it. It's not okay just to be right on the issue. It's not okay just to get the clicks and the likes and the tweets and the big ups on social media. It's not enough to get, the applaudits of folks who are similarly situated and share your ideology for fighting the good fight. People elect people to Congress to get things done. We call it bringing back home the bacon. And as a former elected official, it didn't matter all the progressive things that I supported and voted for. It didn't matter all the new ideas that I wanted to do that were progressive ideas. What people wanted to know in my city as a city councilman was, what's the crime rate in the city? What's the crime rate in the ward? How many kids are graduating from school? What dollars am I bringing back for schools? What dollars am I bringing back to fight crime? How many more police am I putting on the payroll to do that? How am I addressing the concerns of citizens, not with legislation, but with constituent service? So one of the things that Jamal Bowman lost, the reasons why Jamal Bowman lost, and one of the reasons why I think that Cori Bush lost was because of poor constituent service. So in addition to not being part of the national governing consensus and voting against things like the infrastructure bill, which despite not having what it had or we all wanted it to have, had some things that fundamentally would change America. Voting against those things are terrible, but also not doing your constituent work to meet the needs of your citizens is also a problem. The progressive folks in Congress typically do not do well with doing constituency service. Yes, fighting to get the Medicare bill taken care of, trying to figure out Social Security on the any federal program that benefits your constituents, trying to figure out how you can do what's best for them. That's half the job. But when you're seen, and I'm not trying to say that they may not have done this, but when you're seen as only being on the picket line, when you're seen as only being somebody who is there to march for $15 an hour minimum wage, but you're not fighting to make sure that whatever the minimum wage is back in your home district, that's being used for the benefit of your residents. These kinds of sort of fighting the good fight and being a principled fighter, but not delivering on what is necessary in terms of what your residents actually need, is actually not good political work. It's not good elected official work. It's not good constituency work. And constituents will remember in November, as we always say. The last thing I'll say about sort of the Cori Bush progressive phenomenon that's a problem is that Black people overall are not progressive. And I know that's a shock to some people who believe that. Come on in. You can come on in. We're live, but we're open to everybody coming in. Leah, come on, say hi. Another Pahara fellow who's here. She's saying hi to the crowd here.
Hey, friends.
We're just getting started, so we're waiting for the crowd to come in. But Leah's here, and hopefully we can get her on the show one day to talk about what she's doing, the work she's doing in education, which we're going to talk about later in the show. So make sure you subscribe, like, and comment, and make sure you stay abreast because we're going to talk some good education stuff in a minute. But Black people are not progressive overall. And the big problem is that they're seen as such by the progressive wing of the party. There are certainly things that the African-American community specifically do like and do support that are within the progressive ideology, within the progressive platform of ideas. But by and large, overall, if you poll Black people about where they stand on a number of issues, they are almost antithetical to the progressive outlook on life. I think about the Congressional Black Caucus as a good example. Very progressive ideology, but there are a number of things that they support that are probably considered big business. There's a lot of things that they support in terms of maybe like fossil fuels. There's a lot of things that they support that do not fall in line with the Progressive Caucus. Indeed, you have some CBC members that are members of the Progressive Caucus, in Congress, but the majority are not. There's a reason for that, because the CBC is essentially a moderate Democratic organization. You look at things like education. My good friend Leah works on these kind of issues as I do. The progressive in Congress and progressives around the country, particularly white progressives, are out of step with how Black and brown people think about public education. Any poll you take in the last 10 years has 60 to 75% of African American and Latinos, Black and brown kids, asking for more public school options. But yet the party does not rally around that as a platform issue. mainly because of the resistance of white progressives within the Democratic Party. They are typically the strongest group, the strongest block of voters, the strongest block of elected officials that do not support school choice, which is at odds and it's opposite to Black and brown parents who are trapped in places where they don't have a lot of options, and these elected officials are standing in the way of justice, and they're standing in the way of progress and what these parents actually want. The other thing I will say is there's a resentment of white progressives by the African American community on a number of social issues. Now, I'm not saying I concur with it, but there is a big chasm of difference on how African Americans look at these particular issues when it comes to marriage, when it comes to sports, when it comes to a number of issues that have recently captivated sort of the social media stratosphere when it comes to talking about issues that matter to residents and average citizens. And African Americans actually line up more with Republicans and conservatives than they do white progressives on these issues. And that's not what a lot of white progressives actually believe, but that's the truth. And so the problem is that when you have a Cori Bush and a Jamal Bowman and a number of members from the squad, Congresswoman Talib from Detroit, and a number of others, they represent communities and they represent ethnic groups who don't agree with their social positions on a number of issues. And so now you have, again, the Congressional Black Caucus, which is mainly a moderate Democrat organization. Then you have the division between what the grassroots wants in terms of Black and brown parents and children and families. And then you also have sort of the division on social issues. Folks, it should not be a surprise that Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman lost. The surprise should have been that they ever got elected from these districts to begin with. And I said this many years ago before we started doing content here, and then I'm off of this. I said that a lot of these candidates who won 2 and 4 years ago were going to be short-lived if they couldn't bring the bacon back home, because they can sit around and parade about major issues that I think ideologically most of us who are on the progressive side of things are in agreement with. But when it comes to voting about who your congressional representative is going to be, when it comes to voting for who's going to be in the Senate, sometimes even if you're going to vote for who's in your state legislature, right, the big issues are not as important as what Speaker Tip O'Neill used to say, that all politics is local. And if you're not dealing with the local needs of your constituents, if you're not dealing with the local demands of your constituents, if you're not dealing with local bread and butter issues that they sent you to Congress to bring taxpayer money back home to the district to fix, then it's just pontificating. And Congress is the wrong place to stand on a soapbox, make speeches, and pontificate, not when you see the stakes and the consequences of what federal action and inaction is wreaking upon the communities of America, particularly urban communities, and particularly those communities that are represented by African Americans and Latinos. That's the Cori Bush problem. That's a Jamal Bowman problem. But ladies and gentlemen, that's the problem with the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. Okay, we're going to go off from that. We'll talk about education now. Here's the premise. Ready? Black Greeks need to start charter schools. I said it. I said it live. I did. Listen, if we're being honest here, public K through 12 education outcomes are at the worst spot, the worst point in U.S. history for Black and brown kids. And I don't have to spout off a bunch of statistics. You all know it probably anecdotally. You all recognize this problem in your own communities. And especially coming after COVID, we have a lot, and I do mean a lot of years to make up. It is estimated that students after COVID have to make up 2 to 3 and potentially 4 years of lost learning time. And if you look at sort of what has happened since then, many people, many parents, many families have decided not to re-enroll their kids into the traditional K through 12 public school sector. We did a report, my organization, that came out and showed that when we looked at enrollment in the first 2 years after COVID, there was a 1.3 million decrease in enrolled students in traditional district schools. But there was an increase of 250,000 students into public charter schools across the nation. Folks, parents are voting with their feet. They're not satisfied with a system that is not providing what they need for their kids, and they are avoiding it at all costs. The system is just simply not working. And historically, if you're an African American, when the public education system has not worked for the majority of us in the past, we as a people have always taken our own destinies into our own hands and practice educational self-determination. And folks, that time has arrived again. So in the same vantage point, in the same vein as we had independent schools after slavery, particularly in the South and places like Piney Branch or Piney Woods in Mississippi and the Malon schools in South Carolina, African Americans have historically not received what they needed from the traditional public school system, ever. We can just say that, ever. And so the question is, throughout that history, what have we done to make changes? What do we need to do to make changes going forward? I believe Black institutions, Black organizations need to be creating Black schools for Black people. And the charter model is the best place to do that. Why? Because if you don't know what a charter school is, it's another model of public education. Don't let the naysayers out there fool you. That's exactly what it is. They are 100% taxpayer funded, open enrollment schools that do not have entrance exams, do not have any like they're taxpayer funded schools, open to all, and they are working to close the achievement gap amongst the hardest to educate kids in America. If you don't believe me, just look at the Stanford University Credo report that just recently came out in 2023. You can look at the Harvard University report from 2021. There are a number of studies out there done by third-party sources that will show you how well public charter schools are doing in educating our kids. So why should Black Greek-led organizations start charter schools? It's really simple. First reason is they're taxpayer-funded public school model, meaning that unlike in our history, when we wanted to start a new school as African Americans, we had to create a new institution that typically was a private school. I mentioned two earlier, Piney Woods and Malon in South Carolina and Mississippi, respectively. Excuse me, but they were private schools having tuition and a cost associated with it. If you look at the great Marva Collins, who started a school in Chicago, it was a private school, Westside Preparatory. Shout out to the graduates of that great fine institution. These are taxpayer-funded public schools that Black Greek organizations can actually create using taxpayer dollars that we all pay into the system. The second reasons are that the model results are undeniable. It is the best model currently for educating kids in innovative ways, new curriculum being based on certain things like being Afrocentric. If you're Native American, there are Lakota schools that are teaching their culture, teaching their history, teaching their language that they can't get at traditional district schools. There are all boys schools, all girls schools. We all know about urban prep in Chicago that has sent for the last 10 years, maybe 11 years, 100% of its boys to four-year colleges, and they've had 100% graduation rate, and 100% of their kids find scholarships to pay for those college educations. That is actually happening. And then the simple fact of the matter is that the pillars of all these organizations is education. All of our organizations, I happen to be a member of one, the first, the boldest and the coldest and the oldest, as we like to say, member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. But the pillars of all of our organizations, whether you're in Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, whether you're in Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, whether you're in Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, whether you're in Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated, if you're in a sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, or Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, or Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, or Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, right? I think I got them all. When you look at all of our organizations, what is similar, what is the same about all of us is that we're similarly situated on the basis, and one of the biggest pillars of our organizations are all about education. And so what better organization within the Black sphere of institutions to start charter schools to educate kids in the way we want to, in the way our communities are demanding that we educate them. What's a better positioned organization to educate kids in that way, better than Greek organizations that are Black? Our organizations have the infrastructure to do it, folks. The reality is that because we are education-based organizations, we already have teachers, we already have professors, we already have deans of education, we already have researchers and analysts, we already have school administrators who are in our ranks, who are paying dues and coming to chapter meetings on a regular basis. There is literally an infrastructure already built within our respective organizations to actually take and go on the road and create the kind of schools that we need. The brain power is already within our four walls. We need just to make sure that we get it out there and make sure it's done. The other reason is all of our national programs that all of our respective organizations do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a yearly basis, they're all the culture and the necessary foundations to start a successful charter school. The best charter schools that exist have the best culture, have the best missions, are set up to chart new course and to chart new ways of education opportunity for our kids. And I can't think of anything better than our Black Greek organizations. Listen, in Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, we have a program that we've been doing for over a century almost at this point. Well over a century, actually. It's called Go to High School, Go to College. I know Kappa Alpha Psi has Guide Right. Everyone has education-based programs that are basically teaching the culture that you would need to have in a school. Can you imagine an Alpha Academy that talked about the mission and the objectives of our fraternity built into the foundation of that school? Can you imagine a year-round go to high school, go to college program, a curriculum that prepared you to go to college by the time you were a senior in high school? Again, the brain power is in the house. We have to use it for the betterment of our people and the self-determination of our people educationally. The next reason why, because it's jobs for graduates and teachers and principals. I mentioned that we have the brain pool and the professionals and the paraprofessionals within our organization as we speak. There is no reason in the world why we should not be creating schools that will employ Black male teachers, that will employ Black male administrators, Black staffers, Black principals. There's a problem with equity in public education that has existed for decades. And there is not a government program, federally, statewide, or offered through any other kind of sphere that will actually deal with the equity gap of having Black people, particularly Black men, teaching our kids. The ratio nationally, we all know this number if you know anything about education, is that 2% of teachers in America are African-American males. 2%. And we wonder why Black boys are dropping out. We wonder why Black boys, when they do graduate, don't have the skill sets they need to go to college or to have successful careers going forward. 2% African-American males. If Black Greek letter organizations could actually take and start schools, you'd quadruple that number within a year. Jobs and equity for Black people in a Black institution, a public school. The next thing is contracts for Black small businesses. Folks, the reality is simple. And the reality is this, is that any school that is being led by an African-American, a person of color, particularly who understands, how the environment of a school, all the things outside of a school building that impact how well that school will do for its kids and for the families it serves, has to understand that there is a business side to a successful school. And a school run by a Black Greek letter organization would be able to have contracts for Black small businesses. And these are small businesses, these MBEs, these WBEs, that do not have the capacity to compete for district level contracts because they don't have the size. But they could certainly compete for the painting contract in a Black Greek letter school. They can certainly compete for the landscaping contract at a Black Greek letter school. They can certainly compete for the curriculum, the computer services, the technological services, the janitorial services, the food prep services, the legal services, you name it. There is a host of services and a host of vendors and contractors that are employed by the district that are in the millions, if not billions of dollars throughout America. And the reality is that a Black Greek-led charter school would be able to give contracts to small businesses within our communities, keeping the dollar and the economic Black dollar in our communities revolving around more than 1 or 2 times that it does in our community currently, as it does in other communities 6 and 7 times. We'd be able to start meeting those things. The last thing I'll say is that it is about education by us for us, as I started my conversation about this whole thing in the beginning with. It is our history as people to start the kind of schools that meet the needs that our people have. We never apologized for it. We never cried about the traditional district school system not educating our kids, and in many cases, undereducating and miseducating our kids. I mentioned to you about the private schools that started, but throughout history, you can look at other organizations that have started schools. Sister Clara Muhammad schools from the Nation of Islam. Why? Because of dissatisfaction with the traditional district school system. You look at the call by the Black Panthers for freedom schools. Why? Because of the failure of the traditional district school system to educate Black boys. I gave you an example of Marva Collins and Chicago, who pulled away from the Chicago school district. Why? Because they were not educating Black boys and girls in Chicago. In my own city of Newark, New Jersey, was Chad School, another private school that was started to give kids a leg up. Because why? Because the Newark Public School District was not educating our kids sufficiently. Folks, it's in our blood. It's in our history. It's in our character and our very nature that when one institution is not educating our kids, that we don't belly up, turn tail, and run, or just say, we just need more money. We just need more money. No. We have pulled ourselves up by our own bootstraps. We have put on our big boy pants and our big girl dresses, and we have said we will decide the educational outcomes for our kids, and we will determine who educates our kids and in what model. And I tell you, as I stand here living and breathing, that Black Greek-led organizations, those who have led us educationally for over 100 years, should be the biggest supporters and creators of a new type of public school and a new type of public education. I'm going to get off my high horse. Okay, before we get into the whole Harris rising, Trump flailing discussion, I want to tell you a little bit about who I am. Many of you who come on this live and you go, well, why should we listen to you? Why is your content that important? You know, who are you to comment on these things? And why should we listen to you more than some of the other Black content creators who talk about politics and policies? Why should we can listen to, I'm not going to name anybody because I don't want you to go listen to them. I want you to stay here. But you may ask the question like, why should we listen to you? So I figure I would tell you a little bit about who I am, what my background is, and why I am prepared to talk about a lot of these issues when a lot of other people are just pundits and maybe don't have direct personal experience, successes, wins, and accomplishments to back up their credentials as to why you should listen to them as they talk about politics or education or government or reform for that matter. So let's talk about politics. So why should you listen to this content here about politics? Because I've been involved in running campaigns and been part of campaigns since the age of 12. That's over 40 years for me in terms of working on campaigns, from doing the grunt work of putting mailings together and knocking on doors and that kind of work, to actually being the campaign manager for a number of local races in terms of governor and state senator and senator races in the state of New Jersey, local races as well. My father was a state senator in the state of New Jersey, the longest serving African-American state senator in the history of the state. Shout out to my dad, the late Senator Ronald L. Rice, great state of New Jersey, 20th legislative district. But I worked on all of his campaigns, including running his campaign for mayor citywide from the West Ward of the city of Newark. And so I know politics because of my early training and background. In 2004, I was a major supporter and worker for Howard Dean when he ran for president. More importantly, as an elected official, and I'll get to that in a few minutes, I was also the first elected official in the state of New Jersey to endorse a then skinny United States senator from the great state of Illinois, Senator Barack Obama, for president, in a year where the entire state of New Jersey, in terms of elected officials, was supporting Hillary Clinton for president. I was one of a few handful, and I do mean handful, like 12 of us in the entire state, to support then Senator Barack Obama. I was a person who fought Chris Christie, the former governor of the state of New Jersey, on a number of things. I was somebody who fought against political machines in the state of New Jersey for a number of years. And I was elected official for 8 years. Yes, I was a 2-term city council person in the great city of Newark, New Jersey, the largest city in the state of New Jersey, serving 2 terms and being reelected. I was reminded today here with my Pahara fellows that I was reelected with 86% of the vote. And so I think I was delivering on a few things that I promised to do when you get that kind of vote. So when it comes to talking about politics, I know what I'm talking about. Last thing I'll say about politics, the reason why you should listen to me is quite simply this, is that when it came to the midterm elections in 2022, your boy picked the Senate and the congressional number perfectly. No one pundit got it right. I said that the Republicans would have the House and that the Democrats would increase their numbers in the Senate by 1, and they did that. That's 3 years of prognostication. On education, as I mentioned to you, I'm the proud student. I'm the proud graduate of both public education and private school education. Yes, I attended Newark Public Schools up at the junior high school, receiving nothing less than an A in any of my classes, and I'm somebody who went to a very good private school, the Pingree School in Martinsville, New Jersey. Shout out to both school districts and both school systems for getting what I needed. I got something from each one, but it also means I can look at the state of public education, K through 12, through the lens of the public district schools, the private schools, the charter schools, through any model of public education and private education that exists out there. And I know when people are lying to us and when people are telling us the truth. I worked for the New Jersey Department of Education for 7 years actually, working on administrative code for the state of New Jersey and the Department of Education. Also worked on something called the Abbott v. Burke decision. I wrote the administrative code for those regulations that implemented what was then by far the most comprehensive and I would dare say progressive Supreme Court decision that required the state of New Jersey to provide equitable funding to the poorest school districts in the state of New Jersey. There were 31 of them, and for the state to make up the funding of those schools up to the level of the richest school districts. I was part of implementing those rules and that decision. Very proud of that. I was an education leader in Newark, helping to clear the way for 3 new schools to be built in my ward and providing land for free of charge, or $1, if you will, to put in recreational opportunities for kids. I'm an advocate for quality education and have done so for the last 10 years in Washington, D.C. And I've served on a number of educational boards as well. And so I know K through 12 education, which also helps to inform me in learning about what happens on the university level. On policy, yeah, I am. As a former elected official, I passed the most comprehensive campaign finance reform in the state of New Jersey and the city of Newark. I authored the most comprehensive ban the box law in the nation at that time, which says that when people who have committed felonies are up for jobs, that they do not have to check the box that they were a felon or served time unless they were offered a job. And then at that time, they could disclose that, but that they will be able to get through the interview process without having to disclose their criminal history. We had the most comprehensive law in the state of New Jersey when I was elected official. We passed apprenticeship programs for any required Newark residents to be hired as apprentice for any development project in the city of Newark that was over $10 million in construction. I created the LGBT QIA plus commission along with the environmental commission and the African commission in my city. I'm somebody that fought against police brutality and petitioned the federal government, the Attorney General's office, to bring a consent decree to the city of Newark to end police brutality, which was finally granted in 2014, my last year being in office. I was a crime and public safety person, making sure that we had enough police on the streets and new technology to fight crime where it belonged. And I was a pedestrian safety leader in terms of putting speed humps and curb outs and all the things needed to make the streets of our city safe for people to drive. And I was a small business creator, creating an economic development corporation within my ward to spur the creation of new and small businesses, particularly those led by people who are African American and Latino. On relationships, which I can talk about as well. I've been a happily married man for 10 years and the proud father of 2 children who are wonderful. And so when I see these content creators talking about relationships and none of them are married and none of them have successful relationships, yeah, I can talk about that too. And lastly, I can talk about faith because I've been a saved Christian since the age of 16. I'm a gospel singer, not a great one, don't get it twisted, but I'm somebody who did sing with the New Jersey Mass Choir for many years, recording on a number of albums, and indeed traveling all over the United States, singing with that infamous and incredible group. You will remember the song "I Want to Know What Love Is" by the group Foreigner. My Howard fellows always make fun of me about that, wanting me to sing. And I'm not a great singer, but I'm good enough. And I was a lot better 20 years ago than I am right now. And I'm a member of churches that are of a church that's doing something in the community. And I've always been a member of a church that have done things in the community. Shout out to St. James AME Church in Newark, New Jersey. And shout out to my current church in Maryland, Kingdom Fellowship AME Church, churches that are not only preaching the gospel, but are serving humanity and serving mankind. And so on issues of faith and what the church ought to be doing, yeah, you can also call on your boy about that. So that's why you should listen to me. That's my resume. That's my experience. And that's why I got something to say. And hopefully you have ears to hear. You have a mind that will take it in, and that you will be part of the discussions that we have here each and every week. I appreciate you. Subscribe, like, and comment below as well. Please make sure that you hit the notification bell to get all the times that we're going live. And now for the pièce de résistance of why you came here. You want to hear about Harris rising and Trump flailing. Well, here we go. Latest poll from NPR shows quite clearly that the campaign of Vice President Kamala Harris and now Governor Tim Walz is rising at levels unprecedented, and the campaign of former President Donald Trump is flailing, as are Republicans who don't know what to do. Further evidence is shown in this latest poll that just came out, NPR, PBS News, Marist poll, that shows that Harris receiving 51% of the vote as it stands right now to 48%. Big lead for Harris. It's the first time she has led consistently. And listen, folks, you know how I feel about polling. Polling is only as good as the people who actually administer it, and they are still only snapshots in time, people. They are just one indice to show you how the race is going. It's a trend. That's what's happening in terms of the race. It's a trend that we're starting to see now, but this poll kind of bears it out. NPR, PBS News, Marist poll, they're doing a real good job. I trust them in terms of their reporting. But here's some other things I think you'll be interested in terms of what they said. They said that the number is Harris 48, Trump 45, with a third-party candidate is included. And we all know who that third-party candidate is. That's RFK Jr., that's Cornel West, some of the minor party candidates that are out here right now. So that number is still 3% nationwide. Now, granted, that is still within the margin of error. Most errors on polls are 3.5 to 4%. It's still within that, but the lead is still with Harris as opposed to Trump, and that was not the case 4 weeks ago. So here's some of the other findings I think are interesting. Trump is only trusted more on the economy by 3 points, 51% to 48%. Folks, that is Donald Trump's calling card. Is that the economy is disastrous under this administration, and under me it is great and it was incredible. Well, he used to wallop Biden on that discussion, and on that point, he is now only 3 points up on Harris. And so whatever people are thinking about the economy that is in a negative sense, it is not sticking to Harris nor her campaign. I will also say it says that Trump is only up by 6 points on who would handle the border crisis better, 52% to 46%. Folks, Trump on the issue of the economy and the border, those are his two bread and butter issues. And if he's only up by 3 points on the economy and only up by 6 points on the border, folks, that is not what Donald Trump wants to be. Harris leads Trump on who would best handle abortion rights. That's a 15-point lead. There's your gender gap right there, making its way to the feet and the campaign of Donald Trump. Here's some more things. Harris leads Trump on who would best, women, Black, and independent voters have moved towards Harris. And it's something you need to keep your eye on. Harris is up by 13 points over Trump with women, and Harris is losing to Trump with men by 9 points. But the numbers are still close to the 2020 numbers that they received as Biden-Harris. I want you to remember that point because it's important for what we're going to talk about later. Now, here's the thing that Trump people ought to be all aghast with. And this is my target right back at you black content creators on YouTube, you black Republicans, and you low-rent rappers who say that you're with Donald Trump and you think you can move people away from the consensus. With black voters, Harris has gone from a 23-point lead over Trump to a 54-point lead as of today. Those are 2020 numbers. Put a pin in that. Black voters who appear to be considering Trump have moved away from him, dropping 10 points. Harris is now winning with independents. Remember this part too. Trump was beating Biden by 4 points with independents. Harris is now beating Trump by 9 points, 46 to 40%. She's now beating, let me go back. Harris is now beating Trump by 9 points. She's up with white voters. And it's being driven by college-educated white women from the suburbs. Harris is also winning with older voters. She's leading Trump by 11 points with older voters. Latinos have also moved to Harris, but 58% support her. That's down from what Biden received in 2020 at 65%. Two quick other things that the poll shows is that the Biden approval rating is at 46%. Yeah, the man drops out the race, it becomes more popular. And people are more satisfied with their choices for president today than they were 4 weeks ago. Well, what do you think changed? I wonder. So what does this all mean? What is the top line that this all mean? I took some notes here. I want to read to you guys. So what does this all mean? The first thing I think it means is that Harris has moved the Dems back to a position to get 2020 numbers, and that means victory. Folks, I told you all, if you watch my content here, that the then Biden, now Harris, and Donald Trump each had a different mountain they had to climb if they want to win this election in November. And don't listen to CNN, don't listen to MSNBC, stop listening to Newsmax and News Nation, stop listening to CNN and Fox Entertainment. These folks are looking for clicks and likes, and they're not telling you what you need to be looking at to see who's going to win this election. I told you that the Harris mountain that the Harris had to climb, which she had to get 2020 turnout numbers in 2024. And heretofore, we had not seen the enthusiasm and we had not seen the ability for her to grab the same kind of turnout in 2024 that they received as a ticket in 2020. The mountain that Donald Trump had to climb was that he had to win independence. I keep telling you all, the only reason that Donald Trump wins in 2016, the only reason why he beats Hillary Clinton narrowly is that nationally, Donald Trump wins with independence. The trouble is that Donald Trump has not won independence since then. He's not won independence in 2018 in Republican midterm elections. That's why the Republicans lost seats. He did not win in 2020. Donald Trump does not lose the 2020 election because of election fraud. He loses because he didn't win independence like he did in 2016. They lose in the midterms of 2022. You remember the red storm that never was, that never happened? Guess why? Come close. It's because Republicans did not win independence. And in 2024, we didn't see early on Donald Trump winning independence. We saw a little bit of him taking the lead after the Biden debate fiasco, but it looks like independents now are righting the ship and they're coming back. If Donald Trump does not win independence, he does not win in November. If the Democrats do not get turnout in 2024 that they got in 2020, they do not win. The next thing is, despite the rhetoric, Trump is losing black voters fast, and the black manosphere, the black red pill social media content creators, the low rent rappers, and the black Republicans do not represent and cannot actually get more actual real black people to move to Trump. You all hear me here go crazy. Go crazy. I go crazy about these black content creators who are in this manosphere, who are in this red pill stuff. And some of their stuff that they bring out is really good. They need to stay in their lane. These black Republicans out here, right? Talking about, Donald Trump went to a Starbucks in Atlanta and look, all the black people just, look at all the videos I have of guys wearing Trump hats in the hood. Folks, two things wrong with that. One is black folks love to wear things that are anti-social. that are anti-establishment, right? Years ago, when I was a younger man, I wore an X hat, right? Not just to support Malcolm X, but I wore things like black medallions around my neck, right? I wanted to be different. We want to show something that we were anti-societal, right? We want to say that we were, anti the machine. We were anti-establishment. That's what this is in a lot of ways. But there's no real data or indices showing that people are actually moving to Donald Trump in terms of those voters. And those content creators who have hundreds of thousands of followers with them, God bless you. In your lane, you know what you're talking about. You don't know a damn thing about politics. You don't know a damn thing about government. You don't know a damn thing about policy. And so I invite all of you all. I know I don't have a whole lot of followers here, but anytime you want to have a debate based on the merits and not your feelings, and not the anecdotal people that you get on the street and your fellow content creators who want to say and just push a narrative that you have no data and no research to support, come on this platform and let's have a debate, or invite me to come to your platform. And I only tell you what the Harris Biden people have done. I'll tell you what Donald Trump has not done and why voting for him is antithetical to what we need as a community going forward. But you won't, because you're disingenuous in your support. You're probably getting paid. And the reality is that you know nothing about the subject that you're trying to lead us on. But I'm going to get off my soapbox. The other thing we can learn from these results is that Donald Trump needs to redirect his ethnic outreach solely to Latinos, because he's hemorrhaging with African-American voters. Listen, with 80 days left, 80 some odd days left, this campaign of Donald Trump that is sinking does not need to be wasting his time trying to go after African-Americans who are never going to vote for that ticket, who are never going to come around. What the poll shows is that Latinos, that Democrats are still underwater with the Latino vote at 58%. And last in 2020, they got 65%. If he's going to make outreach to anybody, to any ethnic group to try to increase his numbers and get a bigger tent, it better be the Latino community. So he needs to pull up stakes with the African-American community and redirect them. The other thing I think about this in terms of what the poll is showing us, I think, is that there is no big tent strategy, and crazy negative campaigning against Harris is killing the Trump campaign slowly, death by a million cuts. Folks, the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump has had every opportunity. At the Republican National Convention on the last evening, he could have made a speech that unified and created a big tent. He didn't. He gave a 15-minute speech. He didn't see any reaction from the crowd that was in that venue in Milwaukee, and he went right into MAGA red meat dogma and rhetoric, and it was disgusting, and it was not what independents want to hear. It's definitely not what Democrats want to hear, but it's also what 15% of Ronald Reagan conservative mainstream Republicans didn't want to hear, who feel like he took over their party and kicked them out, as well as their priorities. And so he dropped the ball then. He dropped the ball at the NABJ conference when he could have made an outreach to African Americans with a plan, with a vision, with a mission, with an optics about where he wanted this country to go. He dropped the ball there and went back into racial tropes and went back into insulting the people that were there because he felt some sort of tension in the room, and showed himself not to be presidential. He keeps eschewing and running away from creating a big tent. And you don't win elections in America with running to your base. Your base is the foundation. You have to increase the tent. You got to make it bigger to be inclusive of everyone. Everyone who you want to vote for you has to feel like they're being included in the big tent, in the family, in the coalition. And Donald Trump consistently runs away from that responsibility of building. It's a race he's running that's trying to win by the magic of subtraction. And you don't win national elections like that. The problem that he's also having is going negative. Folks, Republicans, can you hear me here? Can you hear me here? What happened when the Democrats in 2016 went completely negative against Donald Trump? When all you saw was the kitchen sink being thrown at him for saying negative things and doing negative things, and all the coverage on all the night shows were the Tonight Show and other shows were just negative Donald Trump pieces. It became white noise because we were throwing everything at him, everything that see what would stick, and it became white noise, and people turned it out. And then people got angry about it. And then people started having sympathy. And that man won by the narrowest of margins, and he beat Hillary Clinton. Folks, Republicans, booby, you guys are doing the same exact thing in 2024. You're saying anything and everything about Kamala Harris, most of which is not even true. but you keep doing it because you're hoping the negatives will stick and that she'll lower it. No, it's white noise. And this poll shows you it's not having the effect you want it to have. You need a new plan because if the constant barrages keep coming and keep stirring, you're going to get more than white noise. You're going to get the effect that you had with Donald Trump in 2016. You're going to make people angry. And then the anger is going to turn into sympathy. And by the the hair on the chinny chin of any political guru and any voter, they're going to show and tell you that Kamala Harris will win their vote and win this election with the narrowest of margins and a repeat in reverse of what happened in 2016. Last thing I'll say is this, that Republicans for Harris is real, folks. Some of you may act like, these are people who have had an axe to grind with Donald Trump for years. No, folks, this Republicans for Harris is real. This group is made up of former Congress people who led committees and subcommittees in the House of Representatives that are coming out and saying, we support Harris. Even if we don't agree with her ideologically, we're going to support her. These are former senators, Republican senators that are going to come out as well for her. These are former administration officials who worked for Donald Trump, who, and you do recognize 75% of people who worked in the Trump administration do not want him to return back to the White House. That's who's making this group up. If you follow my content here, I predicted this 6 months ago. I literally told you all that there was going to be an organized effort amongst Republicans that Democrats were not going to have anything to do with, but that Republicans, never Trumpers, and the people I mentioned just a few minutes ago, were going to create a well-financed, well-executed, well-orchestrated, targeted appeal in the battleground states and in districts and communities, and it would be Republicans speaking to other Republicans about not voting for Donald Trump. I literally predicted this 6 months ago, and it has come to pass, and it's only going to grow. And that's going to be a problem for polling. That's going to be a problem for this Republican Party that's supporting Donald Trump, is that they're going to have a what we call a war, and they're going to have two fronts on the war. The front that's facing and fighting the Democrats, and the front that's facing former Republicans and fighting them as well. Last thing I'll say is the fight after Harris wins may be the real battleground. If Kamala Harris is successful and wins the presidency and gets to 270, there's going to be another election fight. It's not going to have anything to do with voters going to the ballot box. It's going to have everything to do with laws passed in certain states that will stop the certification of results with a scant bit of evidence to show any kind of wrongdoing or illegal voting, with the pressure that they're going to put both in terms of the courts in fighting results. And the other problem is going to be the fight that's going to happen in the streets. If you think January 6th was an isolated event, an isolated affair, then you've totally missed out on the last 4 years and what's been fermenting amongst the right, and what's been fermenting on far-right organizations, and what's been fermenting with far-right individuals who may choose violence, who may choose property destruction, who may choose harassment of elected officials and demanding that they be derelict in their official duties and go against the oaths that they swore to defend and to adhere to when they were elected to these offices. No, friends, November is not the end of the election or the battle for the presidency. It's actually the beginning of another war that I hope we can win, because democracy is on the line. Thanks for rocking with me today, folks. Make sure you subscribe, like, and comment below. Please make sure you hit the bell for notifications about when we come out here and do our thing. Folks, we are here every Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Set your clock, set your phone, set your car phone, whatever you set, your watch, to make sure that you're back with us. Make sure you put your comments below as you watch this. Thank you for rocking with me. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a supporter. Stay curious. And remember, think it ain't illegal yet.